What's going on, everyone? Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. Hello, Allison is here. Yep, the first live stream, b-schaeff Daily Live of the season. This will probably be a brief one. Mostly, I'm curious what the StreamYard technology will be like from the Airbnb here. But I will be departing Jupiter, Florida tomorrow, and so I thought, let's give it a shot. If you guys have Cardinals questions, drop them in here. Rather than just try to spend all night debating what to talk about and focus on a podcast, I said, well, I'll just let you guys decide the topic for me. So if you've got questions here on YouTube, let them fly, as we'll be talking about any Cardinals topics you want. If it's Arenado, if it's JJ Wetherholt, I'm sure there will be questions and commentary on his debut in the Grapefruit League today as the Cardinals. They lost to the Astros 11-6, but at this point in the spring, I don't think the outcome of the game is necessarily top of mind. So we'll give everybody a couple of moments to file in, and you guys pick the topics tonight. Let me know what you're interested in when it comes to Cardinals baseball, and we're just trying to grease the wheels a little bit when it comes to live stream, because it's been a while since we've done one on this channel. However, if you've been paying attention on Sports Hub STL this week, you have seen lots of live streams involving me, involving Mike Claiborne, involving Joe Roderick, and others. So I hope you guys are all subscribed to that new channel, but this is the live stream just to let you know that this channel is not going anywhere. The Grave of Einstein is here. Seth is here. Pushing Daisies is here. Allison, I mentioned. Seabulk, could Palante emerge as the number 2 this year? I think that's a fun question, and so I'm going to start with that. But get your questions in while I'm answering this one from Seabulk. And the way to be able to ask a question, by the way, is to just make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Very small barrier to entry. It's free, so just hit that subscribe button. And then like the stream as well. That's the other barrier to entry, but you don't have to do it. I just prefer if you did. Let's talk, though. Seabulk wants to know about Palante. Could he emerge as the number 2 for the Cardinals this year? And the way I'm going to answer this question is not worrying about the way that Ollie Marmol positions his rotation to begin the season, because there are going to be a variety of factors involved in why he might have it slotted the way that he will. But just in terms of when you say number 2, I always like to think, if the Cardinals make the playoffs and you have everybody on full rest, how are you going to order that rotation? I think that's a fun way to answer this question in particular. And Andre Palante, when you look at the numbers last year, I think you could certainly make a case that if he can replicate what he did as a starter with the Cardinals last year, because his overall numbers were 3.78 ERA, but if you'll recall, he was much more effective as a starter than as a reliever. I don't know if on the fly I will be able to pull up the exact split there. But he did have a 6.30 ERA before he was sent down early in the season. And then when he returned, it was as a starter. So if I just sort the data from there to the end of the season, you come up with a 3.56 ERA and a 3.62 FIP, fielding independent pitching. So he basically earned the ERA that the FIP would suggest he deserved. And look, I think Andre Palante can certainly follow that up. And there's a world in which he's even a little bit better than that. I'm in a couple of fantasy baseball leagues, and there's one league where we keep up to 25 players, and it's sort of a dynasty format. And it's a points league, so pitchers can be very valuable, starting pitchers. And I have Andre Palante on that team, and I'm not trading him. I am holding on to Andre Palante and going to keep him on that fantasy team, because I'm pretty high on what he could potentially do this year. By the way, let me know if the live stream is doing okay, because we've had some issues earlier in the week, and so that's part of the reason I wanted to do this, is to see, is it the Wi-Fi, is it something else with my equipment? So if there's any issues and the live stream just goes down, throw that in the comments so at least I am aware. And yes, the Buc-ee's hat, I will be visiting a number of Buc-ee's over the next couple of days as I drive back to St. Louis. A little bit of pausing on the live stream, good to know. Hopefully, we have it with minimal impact, and then when we get back home, the Wi-Fi, we hope, will be very strong there. So can Palante be the number 2? That was the question. And as I see it, Sonny Gray is your number 1 going in. I think that makes a lot of sense. Beyond that, could Palante outpitch Eric Fetty to be the number 2? I think that's certainly a possibility. Fetty last year ended up with a 3.30 ERA. And even though I feel like some people remember him being not very effective with the Cardinals for whatever reason, he did pitch pretty much the way you would have expected. 3.72 ERA in 55 innings, 10 starts. So basically, 5.5 innings per start, give or take. Not bad at all from Eric Fetty when he was with the Cardinals. And look, if he can replicate that production this year, there is a world in which Sonny Gray, ERA in the mid-3s, Andre Palante, ERA in the mid to high threes. Eric Fetty, ERA in the mid to high threes. That 1, 2, 3 in your rotation is actually pretty formidable. And so I think the Cardinals would be counting on those three guys to be able to get that done. And if they can, who's to say that this Cardinals rotation can't have a nice, stable group of guys at the top of it? Josh asking the question, well, Miles Michaelis, he wasn't the number 2, question mark, or he isn't the number 2? Again, the way I'm answering this question is based on my expected performance. I don't care who pitches second in the season opening rotation. That's irrelevant to the question. The question is more about like expected performance. And no, I don't expect Miles to necessarily be the number 2 in terms of productivity from a rotation standpoint. I would go Sonny Gray, and then I think it's a toss-up between Fetty and Palante for that second spot. And then Michaelis would probably be slotted in there at number 4. He had a 5.35 ERA last year. And look, if he is able to improve upon that, that would be a good reason to expect the Cardinals to be in contention this year. No doubt about it. Because if he somehow turns back the clock to, say, 2022, when he had a 3.29 ERA and threw 200 innings and was an all-star, and you have that as maybe your third or your fourth best starter in your rotation, then I think the Cardinals rotation is suddenly a lot more formidable than it looks on paper. Steven Matz is kind of a wild card in this situation because over the course of his contract with the Cardinals, he has not been super consistently on the field. Injuries have been really the main holdup with Steven Matz. At times, he has looked sharp when he's been healthy, but it's usually been one thing or the other that knocks him out of commission. In this past season, I think he had some moments where he looked okay, but largely was injured. And then you think, okay, he's going to come out of the bullpen some. Ends up with a 5 ERA. If the Cardinals can get 2023 Steven Matz, where, yes, you dealt with injuries, but remember, he had a sub-4 ERA that year, and he's your number 5, suddenly you can go, all right, there's a path to be carved out here where the Cardinals rotation is pretty solid. And that's not even to mention Michael McGreevy and other guys like prospects, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence, and others that will be on the way up. Tekoah Roby, another guy that I think we should mention. He may slot in more as a bullpen piece for the Cardinals this year down the depth chart, but somebody who has looked good so far in spring. But it's the same thing for him. It's a matter of health. Can he remain healthy? Henry is here in the live chat, and I appreciate Henry. He joined the YouTube membership recently, and I don't honestly have any idea if there's a way to do that imminently on the live stream because I don't think I put it on there. But all my other videos usually have the link in the video description. If you guys would like to support the channel, you can do so by joining the membership. Jeremy asked the question that everybody wants to talk about. Well, he says it this way. I can't see Wetherholt starting the season with the club, but could he be in AAA to start the season? Let's talk about JJ Wetherholt. He was very impressive today. Oliver Marmol, after the game, asked about, watching him hit that home run. He said it was pretty fun. Enjoyed it quite a bit. And why wouldn't he? 2 for 3 today for JJ. Had a couple of double plays that he also started with the 6-4-3. Looked pretty capable at shortstop, and the at-bats he took, I thought were really solid. The home run was opposite field, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. Sometimes the wind can help you there at Roger Dean, but clearly he got good wood on that ball and was able to launch it out the other way for his first Grapefruit League home run. And it's got the hype train raging out of control, understandably so, because he's a very exciting player. The former number 7 overall pick last July. When you look at the numbers for JJ Wetherholt, which were largely produced in that same ballpark that he played earlier today, Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, he had pretty good numbers last year in his first little taste of professional baseball. Remember, played several years at West Virginia, had some really gaudy numbers there as a sophomore. Junior season, coming off of an injury, so maybe that was a reason the numbers were down a little bit, but still very impressive, just not quite record-shattering like it was as a sophomore for JJ. Comes into the Cardinals organization having that experience at high major baseball in college under his belt, goes to low A, produces a 405 on base percentage and a 400 slug with like a 290 batting mark. So 800 OPS, he's ready for the next level. But the next level is Peoria, not AAA Memphis. That being said, is there an outside chance that if he really looks good in spring, they decide to bump him directly to AA Springfield? I'm going to say it's a non-zero chance of that, but more than likely what you'll see is a brief spell at Peoria where they can check that box and then move him up to AA. And I think AA is where he will spend a bulk of the summer. Now, if he goes berserk, I'm talking like Jordan Walker, the way that he was producing once he really got rolling at AA, trying to think back to some of the other prospects over the years where if it's just unavoidable, yeah, I think he would then get that jump to AAA by later in the season. I don't think he starts at AAA Remember, guys, there's no reason to rush this. Quinn Matthews last year was really, really good as a starting pitcher, but what did he do? He went through all the levels. I think it'll be a similar story for Wetherholt. Now, granted, there is a possibility to maybe skip a level. I don't think you're going to skip multiple levels, though. I just don't really see the benefit of it. I do think, though, that as long as he progresses the way that we all think he can, we'll be coming into camp in 2026 going, hey, is there a spot for Wetherholt on this team? I'm not talking about Memphis at that point. I'm talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. I think a year from now, that's certainly a possibility. But no, I don't really necessarily see a reason for him to start at AAA. Could see AA, but I would clock it at like 5 to maybe 10% chance. And this is just speculative. I haven't asked anybody with the Cardinals about this to this point, but it does feel like one of those things that let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's a very exciting player. He's very polished, I think, for his level of experience at the professional level, I should say. But all that being said, there's not really a reason that he can't go to Peoria for a month or so, get his feet wet there, move up to AA. I think it's all going to come in time. But yeah, he's a guy that has the ability to rise quickly through the organization based on what we've seen so far. All right. Henry says the Cardinals, have a chance to make the playoffs. This team is simply slept on. Nolan MVP year loading. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know about MVP for Nolan, but look, if he can just get back to an 800 or better OPS, that would really make a world of difference for the Cardinals with the role that he would play in the middle of that lineup. You think about Wilson Contreras no longer having to catch. Maybe that is something that keeps him healthier on the field more often. And you could even conceivably have a boost to his offensive productivity when you think about no more catching responsibilities and the level of prep that entails. If he can focus more of his energy on hitting, maybe the numbers go up. And the numbers were very good last year for Wilson. 848 OPS. Put that in the middle of the order. Put that in there with Arenado, who hopefully for the Cardinals' sake will bounce back a bit. Maybe they get 130, 140 games out of Lars Newpark. Got to keep him healthy. Brendan Donovan continuing to produce the way that he has. Mason Wynn, I think, probably takes a step forward with his offensive productivity, and the same could potentially be said for Alec Burleson. I think the two guys, though, that the Cardinals really need to see steps forward from in order to truly capitalize on being able to take some people by surprise this year, it is Nolan Gorman and it is Jordan Walker. We'll see what those guys are going to be able to do. And keep an eye on Ivan Herrera as well. If he can make those strides defensively that the Cardinals are looking for from him, he could end up taking a bulk of the time behind the plate away from Pedro Paez. It could be a job that he wins. We'll see. That is a camp battle that will be ensuing. But I think the upside offensively for Ivan Herrera is tremendous. He had an 800 OPS last year. And really for the Cardinals, I think they're just waiting to see the defense catch up to where the bat has long been. So we'll see if that happens. But you can look 1 through 9 in this order and find reasons to be optimistic. I even think a guy like Michael Ciani could surprise people based on the fact that a lot of Cardinals fans just view him as a defense-first player. And look, that's what he's been so far. But I do believe that he can develop himself into a pretty good offensive player that can get on base and be able to use his speed to his advantage. So that 1 through 9 could truly be pretty potent for the Cardinals. Make sure your questions are being thrown out there in the live chat, and I will get to as many of them as I can. We'll go for 25 or 30 minutes tonight because I do need to finish packing up the car and get to bed. I'm going to go with Josh's question on Roby, or his comment on Roby after a quick sip. And this is water. Everybody relax. Calm down. Okay. Josh says, Roby seems like our most electric pitching newcomer. Yes, I think that is probably an accurate assessment. The matter for him is to just stay healthy. Any question that's been asked of Cardinal staff, of Ollie Marmol this spring about Tekoah Roby is like, yeah, he looks great. Healthy, question mark? And right now he's healthy. This is kind of the version of Tekoah Roby that I think the Cardinals expected when they traded for him. It's just a matter of can they get him through some of the physical issues he's had the past couple of years, which have limited him to just 10 games in 2024. Just 4 games when he was acquired by the Cardinals at the deadline in 2023. Didn't pitch a ton there, just 12 innings in Springfield before a trip out to the Fall League. But the ERA in 2024 was above 7 between Palm Beach and Springfield because of the various injuries that he was going through, only through 38 innings, but struck out more than a batter per inning. So the stuff is certainly there. We have seen it this spring. I maintain that Tekoah Roby, if healthy, is going to play for the Cardinals this year. It could be as a reliever. It could be that they say, look, we'll start you, and then we'll just see how far you can go from an innings perspective. And if we have to manage that, then we will. But I think they are keeping it simple, stupid right now. Can they get Tekoah Roby healthy for a duration of time to where they can figure out what's going on with him and what they can expect from him? And we're getting a little bit of the technical difficulties as well, so I do appreciate you guys sticking with me. Chris appreciates my diligence. I appreciate your guys' willingness to put up with some tech difficulties from me. Samuel asks 3.5 Bucky's stops on the over-under. I'll take the over, but it's not a lock because on the way down, I only stopped at 3 of the 4 because I took a little bit of a route through Gainesville and missed St. Augustine. So we'll see if I'm able to go 4 for 4 this time. Ray asks a question that I don't really have time to answer. 40-man versus 40-man, are the Brewers better than the Cardinals? Ray, you should send me a direct message at b-schaefer12 on Twitter and say, hey, make a note, because that could be a whole podcast by itself, Ray. I think that's an interesting question. We could play that game and compare positions. We're going to have time over the next month or so before baseball really gets started. So, Ray, if you're on Twitter, send me that message or just tweet at me, and it's something I'll try to make a message of. That's a fun question. And I don't know the answer to it offhand. I'm inclined to like a lot of what the Cardinals have in their roster, but it is a matter of potential versus reality. Like, those guys ultimately have to perform to what we believe in our minds they are capable of doing. Henry says, also to note, the Cardinals had 41 one-run games last year. Thank you for responding. Love your Cardinals coverage. Safe travels back to St. Louis. Thank you, Henry, and thanks again for being a member of the YouTube channel. So the one-run game thing, I think, and I don't know offhand, Henry, the record in that. I'm sure you had that looking it up. The Cardinal bullpen was, I would say, the aspect of the team last year that kept them above 500. And the way that Ollie Marmol managed it, I thought was, and people are going to disagree with this, but I thought he did an excellent job. That was probably the strength of his managerial job in 2024, was the way that he handled the bullpen. Got the most out of Kittredge, JoJo, and Helsley, despite really those being the main three and not having a lot of consistency behind those guys. You had Ryan Fernandez for the bulk of the season. I would say maybe could have used him a little bit more early, but they didn't know what they had in him until he was able to demonstrate that. But other than that, it was a revolving cast and crew. And look, there were times where I'm sure Ollie Marmol went back to his office and said, if so-and-so could have just got me one out, I would have looked like a genius. But he only had the guys that were at his disposal. I thought with the way he managed it last year, he got the most out of it. So we'll see this year if that ends up being a strength or not. Guy like Riley O'Brien looking really good again in camp. But guess what? He looked really good in camp last year too, and ultimately had an injury and didn't make it through much of the season. So can he be more of a factor this year? Because you don't have that Kittredge. He's not coming through that door this time. So you're going to have to find a way to replace that production, and we'll see if they're able to make that happen with some of the other names that are on the roster. Allison says that I missed a great baseball-themed concert with the Symphony Orchestra and Adam Wainwright. Even Joe Buck was there. Makes me excited for the season. Yeah, that would have been cool. I was down here. I'm always missing concerts, it seems, every February when I'm down in Florida. But you know what I wasn't missing? The snow. So I think it all sort of evens out. Jamie says, I don't see why you would keep JJ down. We have nothing to lose. Jamie, it's truly just a matter of development. Like, it's not uncommon that a player who was just drafted last year wouldn't be on the opening day roster for the team the following season. I can think of maybe one player, Nolan Shanwell, that was called up almost immediately by the Angels. Otherwise, it's just not a commonality. And I think if he had started last year at Peoria or Double-A and had success, we might be treating it differently. But again, unless he just goes Albert Pujols level this spring, I think you're going to want to see a little bit more from him in some of those lower levels before the Cardinals pull the trigger on a call-up to the big leagues. And I agree with the team. I am 100% in agreement with the Cardinals. I think it's context. You got to contextualize exactly what makes sense, what normally happens with players. Even of JJ's caliber and draft capital, it's just it would be rare to say, oh yeah, he's played a little bit at low A, call him to the big leagues. Especially when the Cardinals do. Again, it's not about blocking him at the big league level, but while we're on the topic, they do have a lot of other guys a little bit ahead of him in the pecking order to find out about. It lines up very nicely, in my opinion, that you have guys like Gorman, potentially Arenado could be gone after this year, could be gone during this year. You have Donovan that you're kind of in a spot where you know he's a good player. Is he the type of player that you are going to give a contract extension to and build around him? This spring, the answer was obviously no, but they weren't doing it for anybody, not Nootbaar, not Donovan, not anybody, because of the financial situation and probably more so the transition of the front office. They're just going to wait till next year to do some of those things, and this can be a year where you learn who do you offer those extensions to and who become your building blocks for the future. That's a perfect timing for where JJ Wetherholt comes in, because he is going to align within 12 months, more likely than not, to be knocking on the door. So for now, I just don't think there's necessarily a reason to rush it for Wetherholt, but he's a lot of fun. Grave of Einstein says, I love Wetherholt as much as the next guy, but people are getting really tricked by one single home run today. Look, he might be ready sooner than we think, but we're going to go through this normal trajectory of what a prospect endures, check off the boxes. It can be quick. I've said, guys, he can be a very quick mover if the stats and the way he handles himself, dictates it. But let's see him at Peoria for a couple of weeks, then get to Double-A, have a little bit of runway there, play there long enough to succeed, and then fail for a little bit, right? Because if you don't think adjustments at the big league level are going to happen, even for a player of his caliber, I think you're mistaken. So it is going to be a matter of JJ being able to have some success and then some failure as well. I asked Ollie Marmol after the game because he had said earlier this morning he wanted to see JJ Wetherholt have things go his way, but also have some things not go his way and see how he responded to that. And so I asked him after the game, I said, there was that play where he was ranging across the second base bag and he kind of dove after the ball, it nicked off his glove and rolled into center field. Wasn't an error, but it was a play not made. Does that count as a little bit of that adversity that he responded from and homered? And Ollie said, no, that's not really what he was referring to. Today went pretty much as good as he could have hoped it would have gone for JJ Wetherholt. There will be moments where he has 2 strikeouts in a game. There will be moments where he has an error mixed in. I think the Cardinals staff is excited and eager to see how does he respond to those things. No belief that he won't respond favorably, but it's very, very early. Guys got to be able to have some adversity, have a couple of instances of failure, and then adjust to that failure and find a way to come out on the other side of it. All of that is still to come for JJ Wetherholt, but it will happen, and it will happen on the timeline that it's supposed to. Josh likes Koperniak. Looks like a pro. He's going to play a lot this spring and could play his way into an opportunity down the depth chart in that outfield mix. No doubt about it. Chris, your point is valid, but Pete Crow Armstrong was drafted what? Out of high school, right? If I had to guess, I have not, looked at his trajectory. You cannot just compare age, and I appreciate the comment, Chris, but you cannot just say, oh, well, guys are the same age, and so, we're going to say that they both need to be at the same trajectory. They're both 22 years old. Like, Pete Crow Armstrong has played how many seasons of professional baseball? 2021, 2022, 2023, right? You cannot compare a player drafted out of high school who has been playing professionally for 4 years and then basically say that the guy who was in college a year ago should be in the same level of trajectory. It's just not reasonable. You can keep repeating it. It just doesn't make it any more true. I appreciate it. That would be the logic behind why it's not comparable. Same thing with Jordan Walker. Yeah, Jordan Walker's same age as Wetherholt, right? But one's at the big league level. One hasn't played in Springfield yet. So you're going to see what it looks like for a couple of months. There's no reason to skip 3 steps of minor league development. Maybe 1, not 3. It just doesn't make sense. But look, he's coming. Wetherholt is coming soon. I have not, Jonathan, to your question about Padilla, I've heard that he's a very raw talent. I have not seen much of him. So this is going to be another year where, I say another guy where this year's big for him to see what the development can look like. But the raw material's certainly there. He's a very imposing figure for sure. Josh is already trying to give away the manager's job. I don't know that either of the folks that you're referencing are getting that job because, to my knowledge, that job is not up for grabs at present. Yep, Jamie, I'm going to be heading back to St. Louis for 60-degree weather. Just how I planned it, man. Just how I planned it. Mizzou 1755 says, I think the next offseason is going to be real interesting. Some big decisions will need to be made. How do you fill the team out? Wait a minute. This is a first on StreamYard. I finally figured out how I could show the comments as I'm talking about them. We just took these live streams to the moon now that I can do that. You see it right there on your screen. This is a seminal moment in b-schaeff Daily Live history. Literally just figured this out for the first time. How do I fill the rest of the team out next offseason? Again, a little early, but if I had to say looking ahead a year, let's say Arenado's gone by next year. Let's say he plays here this year, but the Cardinals win 82 games, and so we go into next offseason, and he's looking for a spot again, and the Cardinals find one for him. Heimblum makes it happen, and he's elsewhere. Gorman, this is a year of proving it, right? If Nolan Gorman proves it, guess what? Good problem to have too many outfielders, not enough spots. If he doesn't prove it, if he strikes out 200 times, hits 198, and only homers 19 times, the Cardinals probably say, let's move him in the offseason. So these problems, I will remind y'all, will solve themselves. If he's great, good. That's a good problem to have. If he's not, okay, then he's probably not one of those guys you're penciling into a starting spot next year. That being said, I'll give you your shortstop, Mason Wynn. I'll give you Donovan at second, Sajasi at third. JJ, maybe he becomes an outfielder, right? What happens if Cardinals try some Newt Bar in center? It doesn't look great, so they move him back to left. They try Siani in center. Maybe he doesn't quite hit enough. They try Victor Scott. Maybe he's not quite ready or doesn't hit enough. I wouldn't bet against necessarily any of these guys, and certainly not Victor Scott. He's on that prospect pipeline and can hopefully be a guy that for years to come can be roaming center field with that speed and glove work, and hopefully he has the bat that joins those attributes to become a really well-rounded player. But I wouldn't be surprised if Wetherholt ends up in the outfield too. But let's just say, I mean, you could do it a number of ways to the point of the question. Put him at third, put Sajasi at second. Donovan could move to left. Wynn remains at shortstop, of course. And like Contreras at first, maybe Donovan to first, right? Like later on if they sign him to an extension. So I think I understand the question, but there are a lot of ways that it could work out, honestly. Allison says, can Helsley have another great season like last year? How's he looking down there at spring? Enjoyed him last season and glad the Cardinals didn't trade him. Yeah, he ended up getting his Hells Bells music down on the backfields the other day before his live BP, which I thought was kind of fun. He looks good. It's kind of hard to say, though, until he gets into games, right? The thing for him is going to be, keeping it right where it was, keeping that routine, keep him in the ninth inning, which I'm sure Ollie Marmol is planning to do. And then hopefully the Cardinals are in contention, but if they're not, and Helsley is still performing, I do hate to say that he might end up being a trade piece because the Cardinals are in a spot financially where he's reaching for agency at a bad time because they're not just financially, but with the state of their front office, they're not in a spot right now where they seem very willing to go out there and sign guys to extensions. And particularly relievers, it's just a little bit of a tricky dynamic. So I would say that in July, he could certainly be traded. But I agree with you, Allison. I'm glad he's back, too, because he's a great guy to watch and a great guy to cover. And certainly for Cardinals fans, he locks it down there in inning number 9. John wants to know about Gorman. Do I see anything that gives me hope? Look, it's been almost no sample size. So I'm not going to go too crazy about like drawing conclusions from what we've seen so far, either on the backfields or in one game that he played yesterday. I think there's plenty of reason for hope. If you want to hope for Gorman, here's what you cling to. He was reported to have spent a ton of time with Brent Brown, the new hitting coach, out in Arizona, almost like every day throughout portions of the offseason. So I think that would be where you say, all right, did he unlock something a little bit different? I talked to Nolan a little bit, Gorman, earlier in the spring, and he basically said that, did the work with Brent Brown, feels he's in a good spot, but he really traces it more back to actually going down to Memphis last year. Maybe he said at the end of the day that was something that he needed to be able to kind of reset from where he was and just not finding success in St. Louis. And at a certain point, you do get bogged down by it. And then when you're not playing every day, was starting to sit the bench, Memphis was the place he needed to be to just be able to kind of get back to ground zero of his swing and rework his confidence, which is something that he said actually he felt happened at the end of last season in AAA. So hopefully for Gorman, that combination of finding that confidence again and working with Brent Brown to be able to, he said, just get back to being me. Some things with his swing where he kind of got away from himself and the things that make him good. And if he's in a rhythm, he's pretty confident that he can really turn things around this year. So that would be kind of my little spiel on Nolan Gorman. I'm not betting against him. I got to see more to be able to really get an idea of what we should be expecting. Samuel asks if pitchers ever bat or do base running anymore. No, there's no reason to, because they don't do that in games. That was easy. Maybe you think they should. It would be a waste of time, though, because there's just never a scenario where they would have to. Cesar Prieto is interesting. He's another one of those guys I think you'll see a ton of in spring games because he's got a couple different positions he can play, has a pretty good hit tool at AAA, and could be on that trajectory, too, to be one of those guys you consider for a major league bench spot. The problem is I don't think he's a guy that can cover shortstop. And even like Jose Fermin has played short in the minors, but Cardinals have never trusted him there in the majors. So that might be the one knock on Prieto is just not quite as much flexibility for that utility infield spot off the bench. Ray wants to know when am I going to release the Peace t-shirts for everybody to buy. I will try to get that done. I will try to get that done this year and come up with a design where have some B-shaped Daily Peace merch. Ray, stay on me. Stay on me about that. And the other question you asked, at b-schaefer12, you can always DM me on Twitter. Prieto is a lefty. Okay. Yeah. I don't really know that the handedness is as important for what his role would be as the position and the flexibility that he could potentially play. Chase Davis needs to ball out. Yeah, he's another guy I'm intrigued to see more of during camp. I would like to see a good bit of him, and I think the Cardinals are eager to do that as well, because he was a guy that kind of started a little bit slow into his professional career, and I think has hit his stride a little bit more, and could be a case where he now, if he kind of finds his footing, can progress quickly toward a potential debut over the next year, maybe 2 years. Jamie says, comment on screen would be good to pull from streams and reproduce as shorts. Yeah, Jamie, we're working on content here on this channel and trying to make it so much better. So appreciate you guys for your support and bearing with me, because I'm a dummy. I didn't even know I could do this. Ace wants to know my day one starting catcher. That's a great question. I think the Cardinals really appreciate Pedro Pages and how good of a sturdy, capable, prepared catcher he is behind the plate. He prepares. He knows the scouting reports. He's got that side of the game down pat. What's he going to bring offensively? And historically for Cardinals, when you had Yadier Molina, he turned himself into a great hitter. He didn't come up that way. What did they value, though? They valued the other stuff. They valued his prep. They valued how he handled the pitching staff. They valued all the things that, I'm not saying Pedro Pages is Yadi, but the characteristics are similar. And the value that the Cardinals have historically placed on those things are similar. And so that's why I think organizationally they really like Pages. Ivan Herrera, there is so much to like, because how many catchers in the big leagues are going to have an 800 OPS this year? He had it last year. There's going to be one fewer because Wilson Contreras had it last year from that position, is not going to be a catcher this year. Are we good? Are we good? I think we're back. We're learning here. I was talking about the fact that Ivan Herrera could bring a unique ability offensively from the catcher position. And so that's something that I think they're going to force it. They really want to see that improvement from him defensively so that they can put him in there every day offensively. But if they don't feel comfortable with it, and if the pitching staff, if they believe the pitching staff is going to benefit from more Pages, then I think you'll see a 50-50 split. But day one will be Herrera, because I think they're going to be more inclined. And I've changed my tune on this over the past couple of weeks, because I just think that there's going to be that push organizationally to, at least to start, say, hey, can Herrera be enough of what Pages is behind the plate? And it's more about the throwing arm than anything else, getting that up to speed. But if he can be 85% of Pages defensively, he's probably expected to be about 120% of Pages offensively, which is not to say that Pages can't do the same thing that I believe Michael Ciani can do and improve his offensive numbers compared to last year, to make that decision even more difficult on the Cardinals. But that's kind of the push-pull. It comes at two positions. It comes at catcher and it comes at center field. And as of right now, I think you're probably going to see Ollie Marmol and the Cardinals split the difference on prioritizing defense versus offense. In center field, I expect it to be Ciani over like moving Newt Bar to center and fitting in an extra bat in the lineup. At catcher, I think you're going to see more Herrera, but the beauty of that is it's not going to be every day. It's going to be maybe, if Herrera wins the battle, he still starts 100 games and Pages gets 60. I still think it could be more 50-50 and 80 games apiece, but only time is going to tell on that one. Below Reb is congratulating my Missouri Tigers on the basketball win over Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one. I appreciate you for watching and for also having a good-natured comment about that. Wilson available as being the third catcher. I keep knocking my mic out of commission. Will we see more of a defensive sub at catcher? I would say no, you won't see that, because I would set the over-under on Wilson innings caught this year at 1.5 innings for the season. I think the only time he's going to come in is in an emergency situation where, and it may happen not at all, but it would be an emergency situation where, let's say you start Pages, you DH Herrera in a deal where you're facing a lefty or whatever, right? And you get more of those right-handed bats into the lineup. You would get an injury at catcher or some reason that you would switch from one catcher and you'd kill the DH to have Herrera come in. And then he gets hurt too. You have Wilson catch a couple innings, and then the next day there's a transaction, somebody hits the IL, and Wilson doesn't catch again that day. Like, he's not going to be part of the catching rotation, but he is the best emergency catcher you're ever going to find. So I would like to think the Cardinals will not feel compelled to put a third string catcher on the roster and waste a roster spot for that as they have in years past, because you have Wilson there. It's a one-day issue that I hope they will see that and go, all right, we're willing to throw Wilson out there for a couple of innings if all hell broke loose. but we don't need to plan our roster around it. That's the way that I view it. We'll see if they end up viewing it that way too. It was a tough loss for Mizzou last night. There's probably enough Arkansas fans in here that I just don't even want to think about it. Don't even want to talk about it. Realistic time frame for the Cardinals as contenders again. And make sure you guys are subscribing to this channel. I will try to wrap things up here soon. I said 30 minutes and it's already been 35. Can I say this year? Like, it's possible that they do it this year. More likely, I think 2026 they're going to be better positioned. But that hinges on a lot of the guys that are young players this year still taking a step forward. Like, if they don't, and if Gorman is a bust, and if Walker is a bust, which I don't think either of those are going to happen, but if they did, you have to reevaluate a lot of things organizationally. And contender could mean being able to, win 85, 87 games rather than, be the divisional favorite. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be favorite to win the Central anytime soon. But the first time they do it within the next couple of years, whenever it happens, it'll probably be in a way that surprises people. But that hopefully will announce their new standard and their new foundation to be able to kind of stay at the top of the division once again. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of time and a lot of things that have to happen before we can really declare that. TK looked disgusting today. He didn't look that great last year with all the injury stuff, so it was great to see him throwing the nasty bleep. Yeah, he looked that way on the backfields too. Like, Mike Claiborne gave me some trouble the other day on our show on Sports Hub because I was like talking up Tekoah Roby and I was eager, and Clay just like, oh sure, like it's on the backfields, like let's calm down. And he's right, because a lot of times you can't really tell on the backfields. There's a lot of things guys might be working on, and we want to draw conclusions when it's not reasonable to do so. But today, I mean, Roby looked nasty. So hope, just knock on wood, man, that the kid stays healthy, because he could really end up being a good one. So we'll see. Okay. Nice hat. Thank you, Tom and Hannah, for the talk about the hat. Tupelo Reb wanted to talk about JJ's performance. It was great. I mean, there's not a lot to take away from it, but it was very impressive that he hit the first Cardinal home run and did it the opposite way at Roger Dean. They brought the fences in, but that was a ball into the corner. That was not that was going the other way. So the fence move did not impact that home run. Very impressive. Maybe we'll leave with this one from Tyler. Whoops. We can't complain about the Cardinals not developing guys well enough and then rush a kid from A-ball to the majors and expect him to flourish. That is the most savvy comment I've seen all night. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys. I'm a big Wetherholt fan. I think he's going to have a long and prosperous major league career. I think that's going to happen starting in 2026, more likely than 2025, and certainly not April of 2025. Let's give those fine fans down in Springfield a chance to watch him for a couple of months at least before you take him away, huh? Appreciate you guys so much. The grave of Eckstein. I think it's Einstein, Josh. But anyway, thank you guys so much. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, we'll do that. If you haven't joined the channel membership, that really helps me out, so you should do that too. And join the Discord too. I'll start posting Discord links more and talking about it more on these podcasts so that people know that we have a Discord. But if you're like, dude, I heard you talk about the Discord, I can't find the link, DM me on Twitter at b-schaefer12, and I will give it to you directly, because we want the Discord to be popping off this year. Thank you guys so much for making this a successful stream. I hope the technology cooperated enough to make it worth your time. Have a great night, everybody. I will probably be off from podcasting the next couple of days, at least on Monday, because I'll be driving, unless Arenado gets traded, and then you'll hear from me probably on every channel that you could imagine. Sports Hub, this one, KTGR, everything. But otherwise, talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you. You know how it goes. Peace.